Hi there, and welcome to the Castle of Spirits True Ghost Stories podcast. I'm your ghost keeper, Vince.
And I'm the ghost keeper, Jane. And Vince, for a second there, I thought you were going to introduce yourself as Peter Gabriel.
Hi there.
Hi there.
Alas, I am a fan, but we talk about ghosts here.
Right, and Peter Gabriel is, contrary to popular belief, not currently a ghost.
Thankfully, fortunately for us, a global treasure.
Yeah.
But more so than that is the Castle of Spirits.
That's right.
Today, we start off with ghost stories.
I mean, as we are wont to do.
And do you have any ghost stories to read today, Jane?
I don't know. I might not.
I mean, there's 4,600 plus. Pick one at random.
Okay, I will.
Pick a good one.
But why don't you go ahead and read first?
No, I read last week.
So you're going to put me on the spot. I have to choose a ghost story that quickly.
Get on that spot, please.
All right.
And scare us.
Well, I'm going to scare you.
You did that a long time ago.
Okay. My first story is The Ghosts of Crosby Towers, and it was submitted by Michael in Troon, Scotland, October 2018. There is a large Italianate-style villa down the seaside in my town of Troon, Scotland. It originally belonged to a whiskey merchant and was then a care home, and then property of the Church of Scotland. Its name is Crosby Towers, Crosby meaning dwelling by the cross. But there's nothing godly about this place. A couple of local newspapers reported on what we experienced there, and the house can be researched online. In May 2012, some friends and I ventured in, late one evening, when the house was still abandoned. At the back, one of the wooden boards could be shifted, revealing an entrance that was once a door. It was a dusty, narrow passageway which led into the main ground floor lobby of the house, with rooms coming off all sides. A sign reading, "Warning, CCTV," but we knew it was just a ploy and went on. We were pensive after going in the back door. The interior of the house was dark. We milled around a while, joking or talking, egging each other on to go in beyond the passageway. I was at the back, but I still heard that incredibly loud, unforgettable bang from upstairs as we entered the main part of the ground floor for the first time. It sounded like it came from the top of the staircase, just as one of us approached the bottom. I can almost hear it today. Needless to say, we rushed out. The next time, we were at the back entrance again, and I just had this indescribable feeling that something was going to happen. Then I heard, or thought I heard, a piercing female cry. I ran out into the backyard, convinced the cry was real. To my dismay, nobody else heard anything. Maybe it was just fear, and it was inside my head, perhaps due to an overactive imagination, but it sounded so real. Maybe it just shows how powerful a thing the mind is. Eventually, we did muster up enough courage to go in again, exploring the whole of the ground floor. It was pretty ruined and littered with debris, but the old carpets were still in place. It smelled musty, like a library. There was a broken-down elevator, side passageways, and to our horror, a dentist's chair. It looked like a torture chamber. Above the second floor, there was also a spiral staircase leading to the tower. We never made it up there. We were too scared. We joked what our feelings would be if we reached the tower only to hear unexplained noises down below. Would we have the courage to go back down? That was a terrifying thought. A year later, as we were walking along the seafront road that passes Crosby Towers, there were noises coming from the house, like taps on a window or wall. This was a calm spring evening. It wasn't the wind. We turned and looked at each other. Then, when we turned back to the house, the taps resumed, almost like it was trying to get our attention. We repeated the process, and the same thing happened. The building was renovated around 2015 and is now a block of apartments. I have no idea who lives there, but God help them. What I experienced there will always be my reference point in talk of the paranormal. Photos and stories from other people can only take you so far, but nobody can take away your own experiences. You are master of that and know what is true. Thank you again to Michael in Troon, Scotland, for submitting The Ghosts of Crosby Towers in October 2018.
Thank you indeed, because while you were reading that, I picked up my handy dandy phone and I Google searched Crosby Towers. I guess it's Crosby, Crosbie, Crosby. And I found some real estate for sale.
Oh, yeah?
And I'm thinking, this might not be a bad idea.
Text it to me.
I can't find prices. It's a 40 by 20 log cabin at Crosby Towers.
No.
All right, I just texted it to you.
I know that not a ton happened in the story, but I think I picked that story because I make little abandoned house sculptures.
You do, in fact.
And while I make those, I like to put on urban exploration videos on YouTube. So I've been watching a lot of that lately. And the ones that I like to watch, they're super respectful. They're not like weird and nervous and shouty and, oh, this place is so haunted and stuff like that. They're just there checking the place out. But I always wonder, what would happen if they had a paranormal experience, because these guys are pretty stoic. Would they freak out, or would they just be like, that was peculiar? Anyway, on with the the exploration.
Well, I think that most people would react to the paranormal in a just a sort of a casual manner. I don't think that, and reading a lot of the stories on our website here sort of indicates that to me. People don't really talk a lot about running, screaming. It's just kind of a calm acceptance of the unnatural.
Well, we've talked about it before, because your brain kind of rationalize, in the moment you might get a startle, but then your brain kicks in and it's like, well, now let's think about this.
And that's one of the things that I like. There's certain types of ghost investigation shows that I like. There are very few that I like. I don't like the Ghost Adventures type where they're screaming at unseen entities and challenging them. I think it's not only obvious that they're just sort of trying to get the audience riled up, but they're also disrespecting not just the ghosts if they are there, but the space. Don't go into an old abandoned building and start screaming at it.
Yeah.
It's been there a lot longer than you, and you know what? It might be there longer than you.
Yeah, exactly. So I just did a quick Google image search for Crosby Towers, and this is really interesting. It looks like they have updated the building. Obviously, it's a really beautiful building, but then they added on this super modern section to it. Here, Vince, I'll text it to you, and we will put a link in the show notes.
Maybe we should just go check it out sometime.
Okay.
Business trip.
All right, let's do it.
It's a write-off.
Okay. Vince, how about you? Do you have a story?
Yeah, I want to go. Oh, do I have a story? Boy, do I.
Okay.
I was perusing through the Castle of Spirits library archives, and I found a story that's going to curl your hair.
Okay.
It's called Unknown Tube Station, written by John in Londinium, UK, London, November of 2001.
Does it actually say Londinium, or did you make that up?
No, I just did that to be funny. Was it funny?
It wasn't actually.
Oh, all right. Well, maybe I'll just edit that part out.
Maybe not.
London's is the oldest railway line in the world, and as such has many stations on its network that have been abandoned. However, these stations were not all destroyed when they closed, and many remain both above and below ground, run down, graffitied, and dirty, but still here. This is relevant to what happened to me. I didn't have much of a belief in ghosts or the paranormal, but I get that feeling that everyone does when they walk down a dark street at night. You know what I mean? Even in the city, it scares me a bit. I was walking down Whitechapel, somewhere between Aldgate East Station and Whitechapel Station, and I passed beyond a car showroom when I felt that someone was walking toward me very quickly from the small alley to my left. Now at 12:30 at night, this made me jump a bit, and I immediately looked to my left, but there was nothing there, so I carried on home and forgot about it. But I have to walk that way home a lot, and about 5 days after the first occurrence, I was walking the same distance alone, again, when I walked past the alley. This time, I heard a woman say, "Come on," almost next to me, in my ear. This freaked me out, as there was no one there, so I ran the rest of the way home. Troubled by this, I looked into local history, as I've heard of strange stuff happening around my area to do with the paranormal. I found out that between the aforementioned stations, there was once another station named St. Mary's. Like many of its counterparts, it opened during the war as an air raid shelter. However, in 1940, a German bomb scored a direct hit and destroyed the surface level and caused much of the underground section to collapse. A lot of people died. Down that alley are maintenance access doors to what's left of the surface level. Who knows? Maybe it's not connected. But I make sure I walk on the right-hand side when I walk home, and I quicken my pace at that area. And that was Unknown Tube Station, submitted to the Castle of Spirits website in November of 2001 by John in London.
I just want to point out that this was also in Whitechapel. And
I thought he was going to say, when I was reading the story, I thought he was going to say that he saw Jack the Ripper, or he heard somebody scream, "Help me," or something.
A woman saying, "Come on," in an alley.
Yeah.
I mean...
Okay, I'm just throwing this out there, because they never found Jack the Ripper. They never convicted anybody.
Mm-hmm.
What if Jack the Ripper was a time traveler? Now you're thinking immediately of Malcolm McDowell, David Warner, and Mary Steenburgen and Time After Time, 1979. Great movie.
Yeah, very good movie.
And the notion that Jack the Ripper was, in fact, a time traveler from the past, this would flip it on its head and say that Jack the Ripper was a time traveler from the future. A future that maybe, perhaps, was just a little bit more violent. But then again, I've heard...
You mean like 2020?
Yeah, like the 2020s, exactly. Although I don't think that it's possible for a time traveler to have gone back into the 1880s in modern day getup and not
be noticed.
Not be noticed immediately. It's like, it's like the Spring-Heeled Jack sightings back in the way back days.
Yeah.
I use that term anytime I can't think of...
Anytime he has no idea what year it actually was.
It's something that happened like either 500 or 5,000 years ago. I don't know. The way back days. The olden days. But
I personally tend to think that Jack the Ripper was not a single person, but a...
consortium?
Yeah.
Copycats.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
It may have been an explosion of violence that just took... When I watch documentaries about Whitechapel in the 1880s, it almost seemed like some sort of a ticking time bomb.
Mm-hmm.
There were so many untoward things and so many unhappy people, and it seemed so dirty.
And so many people. Didn't we were watching a documentary on it recently. Didn't it say something like there were something insane, like 800 or 900 people per square mile?
Yeah, no, per square foot. No, I'm just kidding.
Per square foot.
Per square mile, yeah. Something like
no,
something
it
outrageous.
Was per acre. And I was like, acre? That's like, an acre is not very big. You got 800 people in an acre? That's a lot of people.
Well, people living on top of each other, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what I really loved about that story is that I have read a lot of stories about the English railway system and a lot of people experiencing time slips in and around those tube stations. There are theories that say that the constant sort of circular activity that's going on when the trains go from their originating point and do their route and come back, there are hypotheses that has something to do with the ability or the inability of people to stay in their own time. And periodically some people slip through. And there have been, accounts of people who were walking down the street shopping or whatever, and suddenly they walk into a 1950s diner.
Yeah.
And they want to go back to it later on, and it's not there.
Well, that kind of makes sense in a way. Like, you could think of it like if you take a a needle, right? Just like a standard sewing needle, and you rub it with a magnet enough times in the same direction that it magnetizes the needle. And so there could be a similar thing there with these trains going round and round and round and round all day, every day, doing something to the space-time continuum of that area.
Disrupting
or
it
whatever.
somehow.
Right. Or, pulling it into a particular alignment, like a magnet will do to a needle. And, you can fall into, I don't know what I'm saying, but I think
You sound like you know what you're talking about. So I think
abstractly it makes sense to me that could be that could be a thing.
So if anybody out there listening has any knowledge about these things, any information, any experiences to share about time slips around tube stations, get in touch and send us an email.
Do it. So Vince, speaking of segues, have I got one for you?
Oh, you bought one.
No.
Not the
No.
not the means of transportation.
No,
but the
what am I,
actual
a
thing.
mall cop?
Good one.
I have a segue to a story, and it's this. That was my segue. So my next story is Creeped Out on Graveyard Shift, submitted by Nancy in Oklahoma, USA, October of 2018. I worked at a printing company for about 25 years, and for 15 of those years, I worked graveyard shift. For some of that time, another employee or two would share the building with me, but for most of it, I was alone. The building, along with about 6 others on the street, was fairly new. However, every time the company would add on to the building or alter the arrangement of the rooms inside, people would see apparitions, as if the construction disturbed spirits. Different people experienced these sightings, and one was witnessed by 2 people at once. Most of the sightings occurred during daylight hours. One night, when I was alone there, I had been working for less than an hour when I heard a key turn in the front door lock. Must be Kathy, I thought, and knew that she would stop by my desk and say hi, and maybe chat for a few minutes. We were very busy in those days and had to farm out work to other companies. If one of those companies called to say that press proofs were ready, Kathy would go pick them up, then drop them at the office before she continued on her way home. When Kathy did not appear within 5 minutes, I assumed that she was using the restroom. After 15 minutes, I wondered what was going on, so I left my desk and walked through the offices looking for her. I could not find anyone. I began to feel alarmed because I knew that I had heard someone enter the building, but I had not heard that person leave. For more than an hour after that, I could hear faint, furtive noises that told me there was indeed someone in the building with me. I got up several times to look around, but found no one. I felt more and more freaked out as time passed. Meanwhile, I was working despite my growing fear. I had many assignments that night, and one in particular was giving me fits. After I got the file close to being finished, I would send it to a printer in the next room. I would have to walk to that room, get the printout, take it back to my desk, and examine it under a magnifying loupe. I was trying to position a couple of graphic elements very precisely. After I adjusted things on the page, I would print it out again, go get the printout, go back to my desk, and check again. I remember being annoyed that it was taking so long, and I knew that I wouldn't be having so much trouble with it if I hadn't been so distracted by the mystery visitor. The last time I retrieved my printout, when I left the printer room to head down the hall to my workstation, I saw someone standing 3 or 4 feet away from me as I exited the door. Momentum carried me one more step around the corner. Then I thought, what did I just see? I turned my head back toward the figure, and it was no longer there. When I say that I saw someone, I don't mean that I saw a living being. What I saw appeared to be a male human figure made out of colored mists, as if the entity was trying to solidify but could not quite manage it. It appeared to be a couple of inches taller than I, with dark hair, clean-shaven. It wore a tan jacket and dark trousers. Its arms were extended slightly toward me. I went to my desk and sat, breathing deeply and trying to calm down. Not only was there a living person sneaking around in the building and going to great lengths to stay out of sight, but I had just had a ghost appear to me. The only reason I didn't grab my belongings and flee was that I got a strong feeling that the ghost had appeared in order to try to reassure me that I was in no danger. Besides, I still had a lot of work to do that night. Shortly after that, I heard the building's back door slam shut. There were no windows on the walls in that part of the building, so there was no way I could have seen who had left, even if I had run back there to look. I made the rounds of the interior once more, checking door locks as I did, and then went back to work. The rest of the night passed without any more incidents or interruptions, and I was able to settle down and work, despite my jangled nerves. There was definitely someone alive in the building with me that night. To this day, I still do not know who it was or what he might have been doing there. There was also definitely someone there who was no longer living, but was aware of my discomfort and fear and was trying to do what he could to help. Thank you again to Nancy in Oklahoma, USA, for submitting Creeped Out on Graveyard Shift in October of 2018.
That's a great story.
So good.
You know what's cool about it is that Nancy seems to have been almost like a peripheral character in this otherworldly drama being played out between maybe a burglar or some nefarious person who got into the building and the ghost who probably scared the hell out of the guy and made him run screaming.
Oh, maybe so.
And Nancy just saw part of it. That's fascinating. I'd love to hear the other side of the story.
I know, huh? From whoever was in the building.
And her description of the ghost was beautiful. It was perfect. It gave me an idea of what it would be like. Because I'm always wondering, what would it be like to see a ghost? You know, would it just be somebody standing there and then they're gone and you're like, well, there's somebody there, but
And his arms reached out toward her.
Yeah, not to get her, but to comfort her.
Right. But I know she seems pretty convinced that it was a live person who was in the building, but she got up several times and, made the rounds of the building looking for them.
Yeah, I assumed that she was going to say, oh, it was just the ghost that I was hearing.
Maybe it was a different ghost. Maybe they were having a ghost off.
It's a ghost off. It's a ghost off. Billy Zane impersonation. That's the best I can do.
No. First of all, Vince, let me give you some comedy pointers here.
Okay. I need this.
Yeah. Your most important comedy pointer for the day is if you have to explain your jokes, they weren't worth making.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What about if I don't explain them? Is it just bad comedy in that case?
It really depends on how bad the joke was. Yeah.
Well, the good news is that I'm not thinking about going into stand-up anytime soon. I much prefer sit-down.
Yeah, no, that wasn't a very good joke because it was just a fact.
Oh, well.
Anyway, speaking of sit-down.
Yes.
What is that? Yes.
Yes.
Oh, a little Matt Berry there, huh?
How about a toast?
How about you read us another story?
I'll do my best.
Wow.
To scare your feet off. That's not a saying, is it?
It doesn't sound comfortable.
No. Well, this story comes to us from Megan in South Carolina, US of A. She wrote and submitted the story to the Castle of Spirits website in September of 2006. And this is called The Followers. Have you ever heard of spirits attaching themselves to furniture or something that used to belong to them? I am a true believer that they do. Allow me to explain. My mother started collecting antiques about 10 years ago. She started off with small pieces like vases and glass figurines, and moved on to larger ones like beds and bookshelves. Most of the furniture in her house now is antique. Ever since she started collecting, we've experienced paranormal activity. We moved to South Carolina when I was in 8th grade. This is when most of the events started taking place. My mother's antique dining table and chairs were placed in a formal dining room of our home. At random times during the night, everybody in the house would be startled awake by a big, banging noise. We'd all rush out to the dining room, to where the noise was coming from, to find that all of the chairs around the table had been pushed over. All of the chairs had to have fallen at once because it was just one big noise we all heard. My bedroom in that house was always colder than the rest of the house. Sometimes I would wake up at night to somebody calling my name. The voice was that of a young child. I could never determine where in the room the voice was coming from. It seemed to come from a different part of the room each time my name was called. I eventually started sleeping on the couch. The summer of my sophomore year of high school, my family moved to a different neighborhood. We took with us the antique dining room table and chairs. We started having experiences 2 days after we moved into our new home. The exact same scenario that I mentioned before would happen with the chairs in the middle of the night. We'd all run into the dining room to find all of the chairs knocked over. Other things happened in our new house too. My mother started hearing a little boy cry out for his mother in the middle of the day. Our laundry room is a den-type room that you have to go down a couple of steps to get to. Once, while I was home alone doing the laundry, I heard someone coming down the steps into the room. When I spun around, thinking it was my sister trying to scare me, nobody was there. My husband was doing laundry last night, and he had a shadow cross the wall in front of him, and he was the only person in the room, and he was standing still. Our Shih Tzu loves to play fetch. She and I were in the hallway playing fetch one day. I threw her ball down the hallway into the bathroom, which is at the end of the hall, for her to go fetch it. She would not go into the bathroom. She just stood at the doorway and barked. About a minute went by, and she still wouldn't budge. Just as I was about to give up and retrieve her ball for her, the ball came rolling out at a fast pace from the bathroom. I was the only one home that day. Another strange thing that happened was that my mother and I were sitting in the living room working on a puzzle when we heard somebody sneeze in the kitchen. We were the only ones home, and the dog was in the living room with us. These spirits residing with us do not frighten me. I'm curious about them. I wonder if they did follow us from the house that we lived in before. I also wonder if they're connected to the table and the chairs that my mother got from the antique auction. I wonder what the deal is with the chairs in the middle of the night. I also wonder why the little boy cries for his mother. It almost makes me sad. Has anybody else had an experience like this? And that was The Followers, submitted by Megan, in South Carolina, USA in September of 2006. What do you think about that, Ghost Keeper Jane?
I think that that's totally possible. The attachment. I doubt that it's, somebody who's like, oh, I just can't move on without, my beloved dining table chairs. You know what I mean? I think it's more like we've talked about, strong emotion and occurrences kind of staining places before. And I mean, a place is just a thing, right? So why can't strong emotions or occurrences stain objects as well? So I think that's probably more what it is, like a psychic staining rather than like a haunting, like a ghost that's attached to it that I just have to knock over the chairs every night.
Yeah, it's hard for me to envision or imagine some sort of rationale for doing that other than to freak somebody out. But I think it's more likely that there is some sort of energy attached, like you said, to the table and chairs, and that every so often, maybe the middle of the night is the best time for these things to happen because there's no other activity going on in the house. People are asleep and they're not stealing sort of the energy from the air. And maybe there's like little, you know how we experience earthquakes.
Yeah.
And maybe there are psychic earthquakes that happen. And in this case, that's when the chairs go flying away from the table.
Yeah. I mean, it could also be that whatever happened that, you know, kind of psychically stained the furniture happened at that time. So it is kind of replaying, you know, almost like on a timer. It could be something like that too. But your idea, I've never thought of it before, that it's because everybody's asleep and so the energy level is different. And maybe it's creating a perfect storm or just making energy available.
Yeah, I think that energy has a lot to do with everything.
Absolutely.
We are, as they say, energetic beings. And, you know, energy doesn't die. It just changes form.
Right.
And I like to think that when we die, maybe we don't necessarily keep our consciousness, but we do keep the energy, and it goes into something else.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I'd like to be a star.
Oh, boy.
Just a part of a star.
Oh, Vince, you're a star in my world.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I've always wanted somebody to tell me that. Finally, after years of dropping hints, I set myself up perfectly for that one, and I'm going to bask in it.
Okay. So you're saying I fell into your little scheme.
Oh, you fell into my trap 25 years ago.
Yikes.
Gotcha.
Hey, Vince, you remember last week when we did our pizza stories?
Paranormal pizza.
Yeah, all of our stories.
Last week, yeah.
Yeah. They
Some
all
good
had
stories in that
something
episode.
to do with pizza. Well, there was a story that you told, and while you were telling it, I was thinking, ooh, I got to talk about this thing that happened to me. And then I forgot. So if you haven't heard Paranormal Pizza, you should go back and listen because I'm going to talk about it right meow. There was a story that you told about the guy who was delivering a pizza to the house that looked all abandoned. And he was like, what is happening? And knocked on the door and like nothing happened for a minute. And then the creepy guy came and...
Yeah, that was called Pizza Delivery Ghost Horror Story.
Yes, that's a very verbose title and I like it. Anyway, so I actually had something kind of similar happen to me one time. Not quite as dramatic, obs.
Did it have to do with pizza?
It was not pizza.
Oh.
There was a small stint of time where I did a little bit of DoorDash, you know, did a little driving for DoorDash, mostly as a way to kind of get out of the house. Working from home can be rough sometimes.
Did you ever sneak any bites?
No, gross.
They always depict in movies, these people delivering food.
Yeah,
and
reaching.
They eat half of it.
No.
And they get to their destination and drop it off and they suffer no consequences.
Yeah. Well, the restaurants pretty much seal the bags now. But anyway, I don't remember what I was delivering, but it was daylight, thankfully. And I went to this house and it was in a newer neighborhood, like probably built in the last 20 years, you know. It wasn't a creepy neighborhood at all. It wasn't even particularly a creepy house. So, but I get there and the yard is completely overgrown. And I go up to the front door and there's spider webs. And I'm not talking about like, you know, a couple spider webs on the porch. I'm talking about like huge, like net style spider webs stretching from the house, like across part of the door. It looked like this door had not been opened in years. I mean, massive spider webs. And I want to say there was a lockbox on the door. You know, those like the little key boxes when a house is for sale and nobody's living in it. I want to say there was one of those, but there was no for sale sign in front of the house. There was nothing. And I would always text and say, you know, I'm on my way. And I didn't get a response, which wasn't out of the ordinary. But so I get there and I knock on the door or I ring the bell or something and I stand there and Nobody comes. And I wasn't positive that I was at the right house for some reason. I don't remember why, but there was some question as to whether I was at the right house or not. So I knocked again, rang the doorbell, no response. So I get into the app to see if I can call the person, and there's no answer. And I'm like, okay, this is creepy now. I feel like I'm being set up, like one of those creepy stories, and the DoorDash delivery person was never seen again, you know? So I'm getting ready to leave and kind of in a panic when this woman comes to the door. She opens the door. She's got a big smile on her face. Hey, how are you? Hi, you know, whatever. Thanks so much. And the inside of the house looked perfectly normal. It was so abandoned looking outside. Seriously, that door looked like it hadn't opened in years.
That's creepy. It's like they opened the door from another time.
It makes me wonder.
To accept a food delivery.
Yeah.
So what do you think that was? Do you think it was just a weird situation? Do you think it was like opening the door to another time in the past of that house, or a ghost maybe?
I have no idea.
Well, the story...
But it was weird and it was creepy.
The pizza delivery story, the presumption is that a dead person ordered pizza delivery at their house.
Or else somebody was pranking the pizza guy and we're going to have him deliver a pizza to this haunted house. Watch. This is going to be awesome. And it was. It was awesome. I still want to know what happened to that pizza. But anyway, this is not the pizza episode.
No, it's not. And it's getting me hungry again, so we better stop.
Oh. Lucky for you, the music is coming down the hall. So that's pretty good timing.
Yeah, you started talking about food. The ghost got hungry.
It woke the ghosts
and
up.
the music started. This happens every week, folks.
Every
single week. And so now we must bid you a fond farewell until next
week.
Whether or not you're listening to that in a week from now.
Or 3 seconds from now.
We thank you for listening. And if you've got a ghost story to tell, get in contact with us at castleofspirits.com. You can call us. You can email us, all that jazz.
And please do.
I've noticed we're starting to get more reviews on Apple Podcasts.
Are we?
Yes, and we really appreciate it.
Are they good ones?
They're very good reviews.
Okay.
And we want more.
Yes.
So please, if you do listen on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, whatever they're calling it these days, most of you do, please leave us a review.
Yep.
Star review, text review, whatever you can. Every single review that we get actually helps other people find our podcast. It makes us more visible. So that would be great if you could do that.
That would be
Thank
fabulous.
you very much.
We would appreciate it. But only good reviews. Don't leave us bad reviews, because I'll cry.
She will. She will indeed.
Just kidding. If you really hate us, you can leave us a bad review. It still helps us. Fooled you.
And on that note, I have a really funny joke that I just heard.
Oh, no.
What do ghosts wear on their feet? Boots.
Oh, boy.